First off, I'd like to welcome all of you back to SHS. For those of you that graduated here, I'm Eric Weaver. I'm Secretary Supervisor of Monroe County Schools, and I am the former principal here. I'd like to welcome faculty, students, community members, guests, and of course our honored guest, Ms. Cleo Davis. Before we begin, Ms. Daisy Hawkins, daughter of Heath Hawkins, class of 1995, will say a prayer. Daisy came to us a couple of years ago and seemed a little distant, she didn't have a really good experience where she was at. So I took her down the hallway. We had a discussion one day, and I took her down the hallway, and she's kind of looking around like looking for an Easter egg, a little lost. And I walked up and showed her daddy's picture up on the wall, and she just kind of looked at it. And there's Heath, bow tie, whole works, probably the only time he's wore one. Well, no, I've seen him in bow tie before. Other than that, he had this smile on his face, and they're all down the hallway, and you couldn't see past the end of his nose. His whole life was in front of him, and he didn't even know it. Well, right here's his life. So I looked at her, and I finally said, Daisy, you are meant to be here. Remember that? So she was meant to be here and following the footsteps of her daddy and vice versa. So, ladies and gentlemen, Miss Daisy Hawkins.
Thank you, Coach Weaver, and I invite you all to please bow your head and say a quick prayer with me. Father God, thank you for the opportunity to gather this day. May everything said and everything done be from your inspiration and your guidance. I ask that all of our actions and thoughts reflect your will and your will only. And if you could please grant us the grace to love you and our neighbors more perfectly. May we feel your presence now and forever. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Again, welcome. This journey started for me years ago when I was a young coach and growing up in Sweetwater. You assume people know what you know growing up, which is not always true. I talk often about Highway 68 when they built the interstate, when they connected Lenore City to Chattanooga because of the rivers. And then 68, you go over here on the corner where Rural King is, there was a lumber yard. And they just kind of look at me. Like, that's not true, because that's what they see. So we're sitting in this very cafeteria one afternoon. I'm over against that wall. We're having a quarterback club meeting, and I'm standing next to Gavin Davis. Well, Sammy Moser, the Booster Club president's up on the stage here, and he's talking, and he's, going through the minutes and vice versa. The next thing you know, well, King Brong walks in the back door. Well, he stops a meeting, and he says, I want to draw attention to King Brong coming in the door, so everybody turns and starts clapping for King Brong. Well, he was all up in years and just had a surgery. So Gavin looks at me, and he's standing beside me. He says, so that's who King Brong is. Well, he's heard King Brong, he's known King Brong, but he's never seen King Brong. So obviously, that's when it dawned on me that we've got to start preserving this history and moving forward and make sure these kids know it. So 90% of my job as a principal was to make sure that not only educate the classroom, but we educate about the legacies and the traditions that we have here in Sweetwater or Monroe County. I promise you, like I said before, I showed Daisy her daddy's picture on purpose multiple times. I'm sure she's looked through a few yearbooks, and if you haven't noticed, on our website, all the yearbooks are posted, so enjoy those. You can look at your old pictures. So many things have happened at SHS because of High Point, people don't even realize. Not one person in this room would be in here today if High Point didn't exist. Not one. We might still be in Sweetwater, but we'd be in a much different capacity. Some examples. The first undefeated team, 1965, hanging right there on that wall, would have never happened. 2 state championships in the 1970s would have never happened. You go back to that 1965, remember the Titans, they had their story in their movie. Well, Tennessee didn't have classifications in, so you just played 10 games and you were done. It's untelling what could have happened if it had classifications. I started my coaching career in 1992 in the high school ranks, not counting Little League, but Shane Oggs was the captain, one of our most mature, unselfish players I've ever seen. He's running back, quarterback, he'd do it all. He, along with others, watching him run and be unselfish about it, lifted me to a higher place. Athletics and these students in these schools teach me more than what I ever taught them. Okay? He was a backbone of a team that won a state championship that graduated the year before because he had the leadership. Heath Hawkins, Daisy's father, always lifted me to a higher place too. He rushed for 2,000 yards his senior year. He didn't go to Pizza Hut after ball games. He was too exhausted. He went home and went to bed. He sacrificed for his school, and these people did this regularly. And we appreciated it, but we didn't always tell him, but I made sure he knew. They helped make SHS what it is today, and it never would have happened if High Point hadn't been here. Finally, DeWitt Upton, one of my Little League coaches, one of his Little League coach, well, our Little League coach, vice versa. I later coached alongside him. He never mentioned High Point. But he didn't coach like a tyrant. He wasn't trying to kill us for some reason. That was up to Dunk Irvin. Dunk would get one of these Jack Lambert forearm pads and put it on. We'd do hamburger drill, and all of us would be laying on the ground over there. And he'd tell us we weren't tough enough. But anyway, he coached not like a tyrant, but like a father would coach his son. At a young age, most kids, especially me, didn't have a whole lot of confidence in athletics because you were far from the best player. When you got Terrence Cleveland on your team in Little League, you just move over, you know, get out of the way, that type. Anyway, DeWitt made sure you knew it was okay to be the best you could be. You didn't have to win the sprint every time. I saw Marcus. Coach Martin and I coached the Hoppers together, which I'll tell you about that in a little bit. But Marcus was on that team. Marcus won every race, every time we ran a 40-yard dash for conditioning. He didn't know it was conditioning. He ran it because he wanted to be first, and he was laughing at everybody else because the kids behind him, like Trip Newman, weren't going to catch him. But anyway, he didn't know he was getting in shape. Anyway, I would not have been a teacher, coach, or a former principal at SHS without DeWitt Upton's help. Where you at? Thank you. Our student speaker today, in honor of the history of High Point, Malia Jennings, who has taken ownership of this project. And I promise she's taken ownership. It didn't take much. We just had to kind of spoon feed her and show her the way and say, look here. And she ran with it. She's the daughter of Keishel Jennings, who works here at SHS and also graduated in 1995. He spent a lot of time marching into my classroom, trying to act like the military. They'd get little formations together and walk in tardy like they were singing cadence and that kind of thing. They had the best time ever, but it tortured me. He's a lifelong friend of mine. It's been my honor to coach him and share many years together. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Malia Jennings.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Malia Jennings, and I'm a senior here at SHS. I'm so honored to be able to speak with you today. Me and my peers have been researching High Point for a few months now. If I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't know much about High Point until we started this project. After I started speaking with some of the alumni, I quickly realized that without the students and staff, my peers and myself wouldn't have had such an amazing high school experience. On behalf of myself and my peers, we would like to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Researching High Point has been such a blessing. This project ensures that its legacy stays strong for generations to come. It's been so incredible getting to know and to hear so many different stories from the alumni right here in my community. That being said, I also heard of the hardships. I'm so extremely blessed to say that I will never have to face those same hardships in my lifetime because of their sacrifice. I want every SHS student to know the impact teachers like Miss Cleo Davis had on so many. I also want them to know about the unstoppable Eagles girls basketball team of 1941 that then went on to win the state championship. Furthermore, I want them to know the name Verdell Latham and how he worked hard to create a school to give everybody an equal education. These stories, conversations I've had, and the history of High Point is so important to me. Thank you for your time and allowing me to speak with you today.
Speaking on behalf of our honored guest, Ms. Cleo, is Coach Mike Martin. Coach Martin and I have been lifelong friends. We've been together since Little League, and Johnny Davis would drive into the ball field over here at the old park with a load full of ball players in the back of his truck. Well, Coach Martin was one of them. The rest of us had dirt bikes that we'd sneak across town, and half don't be chasing us anymore, but it was good times. But anyway, he got me started coaching when I got home from the military. He started asking me if I wanted to help coach the Hoppers, and to this day, it's the greatest year of my life. I mean, as far as the coaching wise, because the kids just had fun. They just played. There was no distractions, no gasoline hormones and all that. You know, you just, those kids, you know, Kevin Watson was on that team, and he's back here. We nicknamed him Tank. That came from us. We had to tape his britches up. And they were so small that they tilted their helmet back like this and looked out of the bottom of their face mask when they ran. So Marcus was all the time like this. We were sitting there one day practicing, and it was one of those massive pile-ups on the hoppers, little guys everywhere. You're just kind of picking them up and moving them. There's a little guy on the bottom named Trip Newman. He's laying there. He's not moving. He's deathly quiet, just not flinching, not nothing. Coach Martin leans over and says, "Trip." Well, he still hadn't moved. "Trip." Well, by then, Marcus and the whole rest of the team's gathered around. They're sitting there looking. Trip still hadn't moved. Well, now your heart's starting to beat a little bit, because he was on the bottom of the pile, and he's just a little thing, and he went flying in there, and they pulverized him. Scout team stuff. Anyway, about 10 seconds later, not one word is said, and Trip looks up at Coach Martin, opens his eyes, and goes, "Psych!" You know. But we got a good laugh out of that, but it was such a great honor to, you know, start your coaching career with little guys and see them grow up and play in high school, et cetera, et cetera. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Coach Mike Martin.
Thank you, Coach Weaver. I appreciate that. Give me just a second to get everything going here. It is a privilege to get to participate in the ceremony honoring High Point School and the culture, tradition, and legacy that it brought to Sweetwater, Tennessee. And I usually get mad at him when he asks me to speak, because I'm not a speaker. Obviously, you'll find that out here in just a second. I get nervous. I think about it days ahead of time. I woke up this morning, I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to speak today. But when he told me my assignment, which is to say a few words about and recognize our special guest this morning, Miss Cleo Davis, I thought that'd be pretty easy. How many of you all had Cleo Davis in school? Several of you. Every one of you could come up here and say the exact same thing I'm getting ready to say, I promise you. And everybody out there could too. But it's a great privilege, a very special privilege to get to say a few words about her and recognize our special guest. She's a former High Point student, former High Point teacher, and in 1976, she was my third grade teacher at Sweetwater Elementary School. Okay. This assignment was easy for me because it's easy to talk about good people and the impact and influence that she had over anyone and everyone that had her in school. If it's, I would say, venture to say hundreds, if not thousands, people. So, matter of fact, I'll preface it with this. I was involved with the Davis family, the whole Davis family. Growing up, Keith was my best friend. I hope he's still my best friend. Was best friends, we were inseparable. Johnny, Coach Weaver kind of hit on it, and he didn't even know I was going to mention this, but I lived on Oakland Road. I grew up on Oakland Road, and my parents worked late. Well, we had practice at 5. Johnny was one of my coaches, Little League, and I got pretty smart. I figured it out. I knew when Johnny Davis was going to be passing my house. So when I was walking, he'd always pick me up, and he took me to practice more than my parents could. So he took me to all the ball games. I rode with this crew right here, and they're just great people. And then obviously 3rd grade, you know, I was fortunate enough to get in Miss Cleo Davis's room. So I'm going to say a couple of things. I'm going to just tell you a couple of stories. It's not going to be long, but Tennessee Code Annotated. If you're involved in education, you know Tennessee. That's kind of the laws that we have to go by. Not just teaching, but you know, lots of things. But it states in loco parentis, which basically is in place of the parent. Teachers are in place of the parent from, let's say, 8 to 3, 8 to 4. Okay, I think Miss Cleo Davis, I think she's the one that invented that. Okay, she was a mama figure, and you knew that. As soon as you walked into her room, she loved you, and immediately became a mother figure to all of her students in the classroom, and she got involved in your life. She made sure that morals and character and treating people right were just as important as the academics. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nobody better than her in academics, but I don't know if there was anybody as good as her as teaching those important things either. Coach Weaver, I didn't know this. I've not talked with Coach Weaver about what I was going to say. He's not talked with me, but I was fortunate enough. I got to speak here not too long ago in a Hall of Fame induction of a coach, and it's very similar to the same things of those special people, the qualities that they have, the coaches and the teachers that really shape you. But if she was a coach, she'd already be in a Hall of Fame, okay? She'd be in a Hall of Fame somewhere. There'd be a plaque somewhere. There may be plaques somewhere, but they're not when you work on that. But she'd be in a Hall of Fame because she knew how to motivate you like coaches could. She did a little bit different, and I'm gonna touch on that. She had the special ability to motivate you like a coach, and she had what I think was so important, if not most important factor in getting results. She understood, and I think she may have coined this phrase, she understood that kids don't care what you know until they know that you care, okay? And as a coach, if you've ever coached, it's hard to get something out of somebody if they don't think you care about them. That was never a problem with this lady right here. When you walked in her room, she was your mama, okay? Didn't matter how much, what family you came from, what color you were, she didn't care. She loved us, okay? I'm not gonna get emotional, I promise you. I'm gonna try not to, but she's a very special lady. That family is, but, so she had that about her, but, she also had this, and then I'm gonna dive right into it. She had the ability to make you not want to disappoint her. And you think about that. Mamas, daddies, coaches, teachers, when you get your kids to want to do that, you got them. You got them. If you don't want to disappoint your coach, that doesn't mean you're never going to, but you're going to try not to. You don't want to disappoint your teacher, you're going to try not to, okay? But she had that special ability. And to me, the ability to make you not want to disappoint her, to me, is motivation in any aspect of life at its highest level. And I'm going to give you an illustration of that I personally dealt with, okay? 3rd grade. I call it the multiplication story. 3rd grade. We're learning our multiplication tables. The way we did that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we practiced them. On Friday, we would number our papers 1 through 12. Miss Davis would give us a multiplication fact. 4 times 4, you'd write the answer. 4 times 5, you'd write the answer. She'd mix them up. I was pretty good at math. I was. But 4s got me, okay? The 4s were just so hard for me for some reason. I don't know why. So we'd taken some practice tests, and I didn't do really well on them, and I was a little nervous. So I don't know if you remember, but the desk we had was a flat desk, and then on the right bottom side it had a little cubby. We'd put our books in. All right, so we're getting ready to take her, on our Friday, we're getting ready to take our multiplication test on our 4s. I'm not very confident, okay? Not very confident. She says, all right, get your desk ready, get your paper ready. So we put everything in the desk. So it hits me. I'm like, okay. So I just take my multiplication factors list. I just put it on the top of my books. I'm thinking, I've got to have a go-to here now. So I'm sitting there, and then she says, okay, put your name on your paper and start numbering your paper. Well, this is what the first part, this is when it comes into play. She taught us morals and character and to do what's right. So it really started bothering me, okay? So I said, you know what? I'm not going to look. I'm not looking at that paper. I'm not going to, I really decided this. Now, I'm not, this is the honest God's truth. I hope you believe me, Miss Davis. I was not going to look at that paper. And I will say right now, I didn't look at that paper. Okay, so I felt good. I thought if I struggle on this 4s, then I'll struggle. So everything's good. So we're sitting there, and Miss Davis is getting ready to say, I can remember this like it was yesterday, guys. I'm 55. I was 8 at the time. I'm sitting there, and I see her look, and she says, yes, Barbara. And Barbara says, Miss Davis, Mike's cheating. Okay? You talking about wanting to hide under a rock. Now remember, this is a family that picked me up for practice. This is a family that I'd go to their house. This is a teacher that we just adored. And before I could say a word, I didn't get the chance to defend myself because it didn't look good for me, I'll tell you that. But before I could defend myself, she responded, Barbara, you worry about your test. Mike will worry about his test. And if Mike feels like he needs to cheat, let him cheat. He'll just have to live with himself. Oh. I wish she'd grabbed me by the hair and whipped me. I would have rather her taken me outside and paddled me. It didn't hurt as bad as that hurt because I did not want to disappoint that lady. I didn't know, and I learned that. I learned that many years ago. Didn't want to disappoint her. But I got through that, and I hope she didn't think less of me for it. But I promise you, I never one time looked at that paper. I don't remember how I did on the test, but who cares now? But anyway, and then I'm going to tell you one more story, and I'm done. One last story I'm going to tell you about Miss Cleo Davis. It was the most impactful statement on me. Even till this day, I've never forgotten it. She's up in front of the room one day after lunch, and she invites us to revival at her church. You do that these days, you'll get protested. Anyway, that's a different story. She invited us to revival at her church. First of all, it tells you a little bit about her right there. She says, if you don't have a ride, we'll come pick you up. Everything's going fine. Then I see her look through me again, and I'm telling you, I can't confirm this. I think it was the same girl that told on me for cheating. Says, but Miss Davis, isn't that a black church? She says that. Now, let me understand here. Now, I'm not going to get into it, but I felt horrible that she said that. You know, it never even entered my mind. Who cares? Okay? But, and this little girl didn't mean anything. I don't think she meant anything bad. And so everybody was just like, oh my gosh, you know, I can't believe she said that. and without breaking stride. She didn't get mad. This is her response. Honey, she always called us honey. Honey, there's not a black heaven or a white heaven. We're all going to be together in one heaven, so I think we can all get together in one church. I'm 55. That was 8 years old. Don't anyone tell me that teachers that care can't make a lifelong impact on you, okay? That statement has gone through my head so many times between my third grade year and to this very day, especially the last few years, as crazy as things are. So I thought about this. I wish we could do this, and then I'm finished. I wish we could take Miss Cleo Davis, put her in an airplane, let her go to all over this country, speak at every college, every university, every high school, every elementary school, every junior high school, and anywhere else, anybody else that needs to be talked to, okay? I wish we could do that and just teach that one small little lesson, that one small little concept to everyone, and you just think what this country would be. That's what, she's a product of High Point. That's the type of people that came out there. And I'm telling you, I bet there's 1,000 stories people could talk about Miss Cleo Davis. But that's the type of person. She's a product, a reflection of High Point School. And it's an example of what teaching truly is. I know I appreciate you, Miss Cleo Davis. I love you. I always will. Everybody always will. With that being said, let's everybody stand and let's honor and recognize our special guests. You can be seated. Thank you very much.
At this time, Miss Daisy Hawkins will return. She makes me look better standing next to me anyway. She'll return to the podium and recite a poem in honor of High Point ceremony.
Thank you. While researching for High Point and collecting other honorable mentions to be spoken in this gathering today, I came across a poem about Juneteenth, and I was able to connect it to High Point because schools still hadn't been integrated at that time. This poem is symbolic for the continued struggle of the African American who, although constitutionally had the same protections, were still not treated with the same dignity and equity. The name of this poem is Juneteenth, and it is written by Judy Sebastian. For every cage, a free spirit was born. For every chain, a free soul was unleashed. For every drop of blood, a hymn of hope was sung. For every life lost, another life fought back, no matter the cost. June 19th, 1865, a slave no more, a free person for life. And yet, freedom is hard to find in a world that's gone blind to those who got left behind. I want to take a moment to thank all of the brave Black Americans that have came before me and that have afforded me this privilege of standing before you. In honoring my ancestors, it is my pledge today to continue their legacy and work hard to build a future that is free of the chains that they so bravely broke. And lastly, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Coach Weaver and Coach Davies for their dedication to SHS, the community, and rekindling the memory of these fine people. Thank you.
Coach Martin and I spent a lot of time making atonements with each other, things we did to each other growing up. But Coach Martin, I promise you, I looked at that paper in my desk. I know. I finally got that out. Okay. We had math with Steve Barone in high school. I'm sure Tyrone can attest to that too, but good times. But anyway, our keynote speaker, it's my honor to introduce him. Mr. Patrick Gaines, a graduate of SHS in 1971, who I met years ago. I approached him at a senior awards night when he was giving the Black Heritage Scholarship at SHS. Patrick and I had a lot of discussions about this project, so much so that we found and displayed your elementary school grade books. That we sat in the central office and pulled those out and went through them and went through them and went through them. And I was kind of hoping Cotton Upton would show up, because I wanted to show him his elementary school grades. Because he probably looked at that paper too, Coach Martin. Anyway, so now we know exactly the kind of students that some of you were, because it's over there. I hope mine are in the trash somewhere. But anyway, that night I went to Patrick and I explained to him that I'd had Mr. Gaines as a fifth grade teacher, that he was the best teacher I ever had, bar none. Elementary school was different back then. I mean, you had a certain status, or you had this particular, but John Gaines didn't discriminate. He put us all in our little 4-desk cubbies, and then he would sit over there on his high chair with his yardstick. Well, I have a yardstick myself. It wasn't uncommon to get popped on the arm with a yardstick if you were looking at that piece of paper in your desk, Coach Martin. Anyway, I've told multiple stories growing up and driving through town when he's driving up McCaslin in his big car with his hat on. You knew who he was. There's no question. And he would always stop if he saw us hanging around that green water tank and ask us what we were doing, because we always migrated from McCaslin Avenue to Happy Hollow, all over the place. It was not uncommon to stop in somebody's yard and drink out of their garden hose, and you didn't know who they were, because there was no bottled water. But anyway, he commanded respect in the classroom, and I assure you that we didn't want to disappoint him either. And I didn't talk to Coach Martin about that, but that's just the way it was. Especially if you served on this safety patrol team. Am I the only one? Yeah. Hey, I'm in good company if Dr. Bowman served on that. So, I think he saw that Eric Weaver was probably going to get in trouble when Mike Martin wasn't, so he needed me to be on the law side for a little while, just help people across the street. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Patrick Gaines.
Before I get into it, Coach Martin, Coach Weaver, you and I had something in common.
You looked at the paper too?
No. John H. Gaines was my fifth grade teacher at High Point. Had to be my roughest year. He stayed on me. And then when I got home, I got it again. And that's the way it was back then. And those of you who went to High Point, we walked off that hill, we might have got it on walking home. Because back then, the village raised us back then. So, with that being said, good morning. I'm Patrick Gaines, as Coach Martin said, Coach Weaver. I'm getting y'all confused.
I'm the one who said that.
Okay. Just a little bit about myself. Went to High Point for 6 years. Loved High Point. Unfortunately, integration took us away from High Point. I loved it up there. We were a family up there. I'm a 1971 graduate of Sweetwater High. I'm retired now. I'm presently serving on the Sweetwater City School Board, where I serve as vice chair right now. I'm in the Kiwanis Club, a great organization. And last but not least, I am on the board of directors at the Marcella Center, a great organization. And I serve as president. And if you don't know anything about the Marcella Center, get to know us. We're out in North Point. I call us a gem in the rough. We're out in the country. We do a lot of good things. We try to help people in the community. Just this past cold spell, we opened our doors as a warming center. That's the kind of things we do. We feed people. People need clothes. We've even let them stay there a night or two if they don't have shelter. So we do a lot of good things at the Marcella Center, if you're not aware of it. The only thing about the Warming Center, you couldn't get out there. I rode up and down, just testing it, Washington Road, front-wheel drive, and I was all over the road. So we couldn't get out there, but we did open our doors. And our director is here. I'm gonna embarrass you, Miss Patricia King. Okay, here we go. And I'm gonna be brief. I'm not gonna be up here. I've been accused of being long-winded. And my cousin Jackie Mayotte said, keep it short. Don't be up there all day. Okay, first of all, we have had great weather this week. Sunshine, 60-degree temperatures all week. Then today, when we decided to plan this, it rains. But look around. Look at the crowd we have here. Thank y'all so much for coming out. Thank you, Mr. Weaver, and your staff for getting this together. It is very much appreciated. Thank you. But even though it's raining this morning, but the rain is not going to dampen our spirit. It's not going to dampen the tribute of High Point and honoring Mrs. Davis. So it can rain, but our spirits are not dampened. And thank you again for all the time and effort Mr. Weaver, you put into your staff has put into this, make this ceremony. And thank you, young people. I love to see young people get involved because everything I'm involved in, school board, Kiwanis Club, Marcella Center, is all about our young people. It's all about the children. So thank you again, and keep forgetting your name. And Daisy, I bet you got all your talents from your mother, okay? Thank you, Mr. Weaver, and your committee for putting this event together. I recall that Mr. Weaver had asked if the community would object to putting a monument paying tribute to High Point School being placed here at Sweetwater High, and it's right out front. There's a picture of it. If you haven't seen it in person, go out and look at it. All the teachers and all the principals are on that monument. And I responded, first I looked at him, and I said, would the community object? I looked at him, and remember that, Mr. Weaver? And I said, well, no, that would be an honor, and it is. Then he said he wanted to have a ceremony paying tribute to High Point and honoring Mrs. Cleo Billingsley Davis. Of all these names, of all these names on this monument, she's lived a great life. She is the only living survivor of all the teachers and principals who were an important part of High Point. Mr. Weaver then asked me to speak. At first I hesitated and said that, a High Point graduate would be more appropriate to be the keynote speaker. But he was persistent. I don't know if the John Gaines influence had anything to do with it. And I agreed. Although I still think that a High Point graduate would be more deserving and more worthy than myself. But we're here. And Mr. Weaver, I appreciate you thinking of me enough for me to be the speaker today. Now, before I give you a brief history of High Point, if I may, Mr. Weaver, I'm going to ask, including myself, I'm going to raise my hand, I'm going to ask all those, whether it was a year, 2 years, 5 years, 11 years, I'm going to ask all those in attendance today who attended High Point. Would you please stand, please? Thank you so much. Now, do we have any graduates? No graduates. But we're well represented here today. Thank you so much. Mr. Verdell Latham, uncle of Mrs. King, had a dream, just like Martin Luther King. After returning home from the Navy in 1946, his dream was for there to be a senior high school in Monroe County for black students. Up to that point, black students in Monroe and Loudoun counties had to commute to McMinn, Bradley, and even Knox County. Think about that. In order to complete their high school education. In 1947, Mr. Latham's dream became a reality. The doors of High Point High School were open. Appropriately, Mr. Latham was named president of High Point High School and served in that capacity from 1947 to 1956. He was succeeded by Mr. Alvin K. Upton Sr. During this time of segregation, black high school students from Madisonville, Loudoun, Lenoir City, and Philadelphia were required to commute to High Point, either High Point or J.L. Cook High School in Athens. Now think about that. Back then, somebody from Lenoir City, think about that. In order to go to high school, they got on a bus every morning and came to Sweetwater, or those who chose to go to J.L. Cook, they went to Athens. Round trip, 60 miles round trip each day. And that's why Mr. Latham had a dream, and his dream came true about having a black high school here in Sweetwater. I started the first grade at High Point in 1959. Now, I know I look like a young 35, but I am that old, okay? I recall that High Point, at that time, now young folks, this is gonna blow you away too. We were grades 1 through 12 at High Point. Think about that, 1 through 12. The teachers were great, every one of them. They loved us. They cared for us. We were a High Point family. The first High Point graduating class was the class of 1951. The last graduating class was the class of 1964. High Point then went from grades 1 through 8. Then grades 1 through 6. Finally, in the 1970s, High Point closed permanently. And my father, Mr. John H. Gaines, was the last principal of High Point. And this isn't in my speech, but I'm gonna put it in here. When it closed, it sat empty. We used to go up there and play ball in the gym, but the school was empty, not being used, and it was vandalized. To this day, we don't know who did it. They tore it up, they vandalized it, and it hurt to see our school in that condition, that somebody would go up there and just tear it up like that. And it wasn't salvaged, it wasn't saved. Many of us, we couldn't do anything at the time because we were young, we were kids, we didn't have no money to help save it. But now today, so great memories up there. The school was located in the West End community of Sweetwater on Patton Street. Sits up on a hill, and that's why they called it High Point. You go up there and basically could look over the city. Brian Birchfield, I'm gonna take him up there one day and show him where it is. He wants to know where it is. The building was eventually torn down. A barren, vacant lot is now the site where a great institution once stood. But let us never forget our history and the legacy of High Point, where every student was expected to learn and achieve. And our teachers not only taught us the required curriculum from used hand-me-down textbooks, I had to put that in there, and also my dad, who was the football coach, got hand-me-down football equipment from TMI back then. So, just wanted to point that out, just wanted to give that to you. But our teacher, from the textbooks, let me get back on track. Our teachers taught from hand-me-down textbooks, but they also taught us respect, value, and life lessons. I loved High Point. As I said before, we were a family. We were a family. The teachers' wisdom, their wisdom, love, and prayers taught us to soar like eagles. And I mention eagles because we were the High Point Eagles. Red and white were our colors. And we did soar. We've had many successful people that have been educated and have walked through the hallowed halls of High Point. So in closing, I'd like to say, fly, eagles, fly. Our dear, excuse me, our dear old High Point High. Thank you.
Okay, before I ever talked to Mr. Gaines about that monument, I had spent multiple days at High Point, or excuse me, not High Point, but Engelman Park, looking at the monument that was built. I'm assuming, and I'm under the impression that that monument was built with bricks from the building. I was most fascinated by the church bell, the school bell, excuse me, church bell, that is still in that monument that I'd like to snatch and bring out here and mount on top of my monument. But I didn't want people to think I was stepping on the original toes, because we had a custodian, Doug McCowan, that dear friends with, that was on that committee. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody'd be on board and that we could do this, because the people in Sweetwater High School needed to know the history. So for our unveiling and for the monument, we're all going to go outside and stand in the rain. No, we're not. I anticipated this to begin with, because we did this, we originally broke ground and put it in the ground, and the first person to see it, besides myself, was Miss Cleo Davis. There's a picture on that, that she came out, and the newspaper came out, and we put that monument in the ground, and it's about 3 feet down in the ground in concrete, so hopefully it's going to be there a long time, because if you remember, Sweetwater High School had a book monument. The first senior class out here next to the road kind of looked like a pages of a book, and it was signed in concrete. Well, somebody ran over it, but you can't replace those kind of things. So anyway, Miss Daisy Hawkins and Miss Malia Jennings, along with the help with Miss Cleo, will show our monument, and Kiki. We waited until now to do the ceremony because we wanted it to be part of Black History Month. We're in the cafeteria because, number one, there's construction outside. And the monument is ready. It's already set in its campus. So, ladies and gentlemen, the High Point Monument of Sweetwater High School. We spent a lot of hours making sure the names were right, and the principals and et cetera, to make sure that we didn't leave any stone unturned, any person left. So a lot of that went into play before I'd ever talked to Patrick Gaines about getting this thing off the ground. In honor of all the faculty on the High Point Monument, we are inducting them into the SHS Hall of Fame, and their memory will be preserved not only in stone, but digitally forever, as part of SHS. You can visit our Hall of Fame site to view in the near future. I think some of it's already up. I do ask if it's possible, if you have any pictures of the faculty members that we couldn't get, please allow us to use them so we can copy them and put them on the website to add to the Hall of Fame. Because this whole thing started every time we build a monument. And I'm going to tell this story. It's not necessarily for me. I've told people, don't be offended. I said, don't put my name on anything. I said, if I fall over dead tomorrow, and I was a principal, I said, don't worry about it. Just go on. I said, if you want to put my name on something, put it over a urinal, because somebody's going to use it, and occasionally it's going to get cleaned. But if you put something out here in the grass and nobody mows the grass, what happens to it? It disappears. So this whole thing started with the help of Dr. Windsor and Coach Davies, that we could do this Hall of Fame and put this together, because I was thinking about some big wall outside, old school, that we can do this and people can come and see. Well, we could still do that, but this way it never disappears. A fire don't burn it down. It's permanent. I'd like to thank the following people for helping achieve this goal, and this is a goal. This is one of my top goals of being a faculty member and an assistant principal, a coach, and a principal at Sweetwater High School for 30 years. The list is long, but the only other major accomplishment that I have other than student relationships is retiring Anthony Oggs' jersey. You know, that was a high point of my career and trying to figure out why people haven't done that already, but it got done. First off, number one, Miss Jacqueline Cleveland. She's been in the back. She's going to try to hide. I can bring an idea to life, but there's somebody that has to pick it up and draw it like an architect. Well, she's that person. She can spin it and make it sound a whole lot better than it really is. And she's not even an AI. But anyway, Coach Davies, where you at? Coach Davies is the mastermind behind all the technology, because she came to me and said, and good principals or good leaders will listen to their peers and their teachers, but they don't always make the decision, but they have to make decisions based on the best for the students, the entire school, and the faculty. But she comes to me and we talk about starting a media arts class. Well, we start going through it, we start talking about it, and then she gets on board and she starts teaching me about it and vice versa. And I say, okay, can we do this? So we start preserving things. So huge thanks to her. None of this happens without her ability to do this, and her students that have worked diligently, and two of them right here that have made this happen. So let's give them a round of applause. The rest of them are standing out in the rain with umbrellas, or back here serving drinks and that type of thing. And no, it's not an open bar. Coach Heather Jeremilo, she's another one that can run with it and help, and she's done amazing. Kendra Cox, stand up. I'm embarrassing her, obviously, but she's my historian. This young lady can find a needle in a haystack. I promise you. I gave her a name, and she came back with a book about that thick from day one. She's got the history of how Sweetwater began from the Lenore family moving down from Lenore City and starting Sweetwater. She knows it all. She's a genealogy expert, and she educates our kids. Okay, she takes care of monuments and tombstones all over Sweetwater and cleans them up and that kind of thing. But you know, she's instrumental in researching and finding information for us. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of information because all High Point High School records, Mr. Gaines's high school records, went to Monroe County Records. So they're all being digitized now as we speak. So they're in the cyber world somewhere. Tommy Millsaps, I hired him immediately when the Advocate shut down over here in Sweetwater, and I knew he had a history degree, not necessarily to teach, but he could do a multitude of things. One, he could do a school newspaper, and two, the archives, when it used to rain in the summertime, we had nothing to do. I'd go down to the old Advocate building and pull the archive books out from the 50s and 60s and open them up. And I think they go back to 1954 to currently, and they're in the basement of City Hall. I could read about Steve Brong and Mickey Plemons running the split back veer, and when they didn't have classifications, when they're playing Jefferson County and Bradley County and teams like that and beating them. And actually on YouTube in 1969, there's a JC's Bowl in Rockwood that Sweetwater was 9-1. The year before they were runner-up in the state championship, they played Whitwell in the JC's Bowl on Thanksgiving Day in Rockwood. All the coaches were in suit and ties, and it was a body block and a chop block and a fest. It's just take everybody's knees out and let's just kill everybody, and we're going to run around the end, here we come, that kind of thing. But it's in color and it's on YouTube. It's a phenomenal video. I'd suggest that you watch it if you want to see old school football. Mr. Patrick Gaines, I want to thank him because none of this is possible without him and his wisdom and his guidance and helping me, because I didn't want it to get out that we were doing this because I kind of wanted it to be a surprise. The only one I wanted to know for sure was Miss Cleo. Christy Windsor, get up. Don't roll your eyes. Don't do it. This is my boss. This is the director of schools. She's been instrumental. She's been on this project from day one. She supported me. She helped me. She helped fund it. It's not possible without her. Thank you. I was sitting at the board meeting last night, and I got told a story about one little girl, and it said she was asked to spell a word or something like that. Well, she stretched, and she didn't want to participate because her mom had told her, or teacher had told her mom about something. So she said, "Well, I'm just stretching," and then she rolled her eyes and said, "If my eyes are rolled, I'm just stretching those too." And I'm like, I thought that's a pretty good comeback. But anyway. I'd like to thank Sweetwater High School, obviously, and Principal Vineyard back to back for allowing us to do this and be in this building, et cetera, et cetera. If most of you don't know that trying to preserve history is a massive undertaking, and this school is very old and vice versa, and most of us all went here, but the middle of the building, the support beam that hadn't seen daylight since the 20s has kind of cracked. It's a hand-cut beam that was underneath, sitting on brick pedestals that run the length of the main building. Well, it kind of snapped, and they've been digging up the classes from the dirt down from the inside that you don't see because you drive by and say, "Boy, that pretty building," and then the hurricane and the tornadoes going on in the hallway that they're having to deal with, nobody knows about. But kids are still being educated. Okay. Larry Anderson, I'd like to thank him, who repeatedly allowed me to constantly bring students down to the City Museum, Sweetwater City Museum. It's an eye-opening experience to a student that's never not known a cell phone. If you've never been down there, go see it. There's a High Point display, there's athletic displays, there's pictures of Main Street and everything possible beforehand. There's an old camera that I didn't know was a camera. It's about the size of this podium that Davies knew exactly what. She started using it, but I've never seen anything like it. But anyway, special thanks, last but not least, Ms. Cleo Davis for being our guest of honor. Thank you for all coming this joyous occasion. I ask that you help me be proactive in continuing to promote the education of our school, community, and history. Coach Walker and I have been talking about doing a High Point night in February for basketball every year. We think that we can purchase uniforms of High Point for about $1,500, correct? That we can wear those one particular night each year. But anyway, if you're interested in discussing that, you can see me or Mr. Walker. But anyway, this concludes our ceremony. Thank you for coming. Have a blessed day.
Good morning. I'm Sweetwater High School senior Kiki Norfolk. I'm here with Patrick Gaines. How are you?
Good, thank you. And you, how are you doing this
I'm
morning?
doing good. Can you share some memories with us of attending High Point and how it shaped your educational experience?
Yes, I can. I started at High Point in 1959 as a first grader.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And at the time, the school was 1 through 12. And I know that's very unique because you don't see that anymore. And we had some great teachers.
That's awesome.
We had great teachers.
That's awesome. What role did your parents play in your academic journey?
Both my parents were teachers.
Oh, okay.
So I was kind of required to give it my best.
That's
and
awesome.
then my father, John H. Gaines, who is now deceased, he was my 5th grade teacher.
Okay.
And that was a rough year, okay?
It's not always fun with your parents teaching. In what ways did the legacy of your family influence your educational path?
Okay, well, both of them being teachers, I was just taught to strive, to do my best.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, them being teachers, I was kind of under the microscope
Yeah.
in Sweetwater, so yes.
Yeah. What insights can you share about the importance of preserving the history and legacy of all black schools?
Okay, it's very important, very important. We got a quality education at our schools. And we were small in numbers, so therefore the teachers could give us more attention.
Yes, absolutely.
And they cared for us, they loved us, and they were part of our community.
That's great.
You know,
Yep.
for example, my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Smith, Lucille Smith, she was my Sunday school teacher at one time, so.
Yep, it's a very tight-knit community.
Yes.
Can you describe any memorable experience or events that occurred at the all-black school?
Yes. One thing, we had May Day every year. We got out of class, we had activities, athletic activities, and it was just, I don't know, there's so many memories.
Yeah.
There were just so many memories, but May Day stood out, and it was just, another memory was, since we were small, 2 classes were combined.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
for example, the 3rd and 4th grade, when Miss Smith got finished with the 3rd grade, she went over to the 4th grade. We were in the same room together.
That's awesome. Yeah.
An advantage of that was that when we got to the 4th grade, if we were paying attention, we said, okay, I remember that from last year. And there it
Yeah.
was.
Yep. Were there any particular individuals at High Point who had a significant impact on your life?
Yes, all my teachers, all of them. Mrs. Viola Prater, she was my 1st and 2nd grade teacher. She is, well, all these people are deceased now. She was the grandmother of Mrs. Prater,
Okay, yeah.
Mrs. Marlene Prater.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
So all the teachers at High Point had an influence on me.
Perfect. Well, that's great to hear. Thank you for
Well, thank you.
letting me interview and ask some questions about
All
it.
right.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Hi guys, I'm here with educator Cleo Davis, who taught at High Point, and I have a few questions for you today.
Okay.
Perfect. What is your favorite memory of being an educator at High Point?
Remembering, think I remember when every child, especially the ones in my room, did not come through that door, get out the bus or car, whatever. They were good attenders. And I look forward to seeing all the children every year. And if somebody wasn't there, if someone touched me and asked me a question, and I didn't see that person I was thinking about, I'd be asking, where is so? And I just miss the children.
That's awesome.
High Point was great. It was my alma mater.
Yeah.
From K through 12, forget the K. It wasn't that far back. And then after went to school to finally teach up there the last years it was there, then it was just one complete picture.
Yeah.
If you're on a merry-go-round, it went all the way around. It was complete then, because
That's
I did
great.
go down to the elementary school and teach for a while. But
Yeah,
so
that's great.
mhm.
If you could speak to your students today, what would you tell them?
Well, wow. I tell the first, I guess, no, that's a big one. I started to say, I have to probably say, comment on how they were dressed and are dressing today.
Yeah.
And comment on the hair
Okay.
and how they're looking today.
Yeah.
And see, well, it sounds like I'm all about appearance, but now, so it's just one thing about the student.
Yeah.
And I naturally tell them, stay in school, you made it this far, whatever time I'm with them. And same like that, and evidently, most likely a name or somebody
Okay.
older
Yeah.
that would come up that they would know. and that I would know, and we'd say something about that, have a few laughs, and I don't know, it just goes back to a time like that. That's what I would think of, you know, or they were dressing, they were attending school, they were there, and their hair, and then the people.
Yeah. What advice would you give educators today?
Well, although we're trying to get them to, you know, receive what they need to live in the world today, but then I would also comment on has been with them, their life, and how they can use living and learning in their lifestyle to incorporate it into what they're doing at this time.
Absolutely.
All time.
What challenges did you face as an educator during the transition period from segregation to integration?
Well, it was just so many, but they were all very good. And when we, you know, that you be at a certain level, a certain place at a certain time with all the students and with the group you should be with, and to talk to them, I don't know, it just seemed like they all would become alike at one time.
Yeah.
At one time, you never would meet strangers for long because they just would incorporate it, just like you had them or knew their parents or grandparents or something like that all along.
Okay. Awesome. How did your teaching style evolve as you navigated the changes brought about by integration?
Wow, that's what I can say, wow. The reason why I said that changes now. Most thing we had was our own drawing and what we had to show and tell, and we'd find from magazines or books and bulletin boards. And I say that because as I, you know, graduated along, we got involved with movies and showing films and things like that to pull from. And it was very different, and it seemed like things were changing so much.
Awesome. Can you share a specific example of how you supported and empowered your students during the time of a significant societal change?
Well, be yourself, I'd say. Be nice. If you don't know, ask the question, you know, what it is you don't know. And so, you know, that way they could get involved with them.
Absolutely.
And I could get involved with them when I would, but most of all, asking questions and talking to find out.
Okay. Yeah. What do you believe was the most important lesson your students had learned from you during this pivotal time in history?
I would like to say that from me. They'd always say, she's funny, she's crazy, she said that. And, but that is what I remember and what they remember. I would hope that they would, they made the change real well.
Okay. Yeah.
And it seemed like the change with them were excited if there's anything was new. Before they blurted out to or anything, they'd ask questions about it to try to find
Awesome.
the
Yeah.
lead off into it. And just talking with the students, sometimes just talking, they want answers. And if you answer their question, thing like that, I think you will, you know, get along okay,
Yeah.
and they will too.
How did you ensure that all your students, regardless of background, felt valued and respected in your classroom?
It was good, but what I can say is each one is different. Knowing each one is different. What they bring, when you find out, I mean, what they've got and what they bring, you don't see it in other students, you comment on those things, they really like that. And it get them to well, super more friendly or something like that. It make them feel more welcome, and they'll be open up to talk and tell you things, because you have some of the quiet ones, and some of them may cry on you. So if you make them comfortable and let them talk and show interest in their interests, I just think it's a good thing for them.
Looking back on your career, what are you most proud of in terms of your contribution to education and the lives of your students?
Gosh, you said so many. Well, when I look back and making sure you're teaching them the right facts and things that they need to know, and most of all, how to apply it to their life, and what they're doing, what they can do, and things like that, and how they can contribute and help others and get them involved in their learning situation like that. I think it's real good for them.
That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for talking with me and letting me know a little more about High Point.
Oh,
Thank
yeah. Oh,
you.
well, I did tell you. Yeah, the High Point was. I know it's. Sorry, to say, it's just nothing like it. Seemed like as I got involved in some of the other schools and everything, and people, when the kids would see you and each other and things like that, they'd yell out and they'd call you High Point. I mean, yeah, they call you, hey, there's Miss High Point. Well, I was not, but anyway, that was something they would just yell out, saying, and things that they know. I think the kids that went to High Point, did get a lot to carry with them in their school.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. I enjoyed talking with you. Thank you.